New morality would be, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what your country has done for you lately. And the reason is because the modern notion is that the state's purpose is to serve the individual and to create both an environment and a personal experience that enables them to fulfill themselves. So, for example, it is a moral obligation of the modern state to provide minimal subsistence, housing, healthcare, and education for all its citizens. Now, most European countries have already accepted this. We pretty much accept it for subsistence and education. We're still struggling with it with respect to healthcare. The morality of self-fulfillment is dominant. The morality of higher purposes is basically threadbare. But we're still in a time of transition, and the transition is still sufficiently in process so that people are clinging to those last fragments of higher purposes morality with a kind of intensity. And this leads, for example, to efforts to pump meaning back into religion. So, for example, the Indiana statute allowing people in the name of quote-unquote religious freedom to discriminate against gay people is an effort to sort of cling to a last fragment of higher purposes morality and, sort of mobilize people around the last remaining, or one of the last remaining areas where discrimination and this hierarchical notion of the way you treat people is still acceptable. You couldn't get that anymore. Anyone who made a similar comment about a racial minority their political career would be over. And we've seen that. Two basic themes of that morality. First, that people are supposed to act in order to achieve personal salvation. So, for example, sex, always a big topic for morality. The notion was that sex was moral only when it was designed for the higher purpose of procreating the species, which was the only thing that would guarantee your salvation, and that it was otherwise improper or immoral. The parallel development was the notion that the individual is supposed to serve the state, and that the state, the centralizing monarchies, as I call them, was the higher purpose of political behavior. So that enabled me to characterize what we just call morality or traditional morality as a morality of higher purposes. That morality is being abandoned or replaced, and it's being replaced by a different moral vision, which is centered around human self-fulfillment. And the idea of this is that each person creates their own path in life, and each person has to find their own self-fulfillment in the here and now. And this is related to the transformation of government. So instead of people serving the government and acting as loyal subjects, the government is supposed to serve the people. That's the notion of an administrative state, that the government provides services to the people. And the sort of moral test of those services is, does it aid people in achieving a self-fulfilled life? Now, in the 19th and 20th and into the 21st century, we have the same situation where two moralities are battling each other. Now, the old morality, which is losing ground, is that morality of higher purposes that triumphed in the earlier era and is being replaced by a new morality of self-fulfillment. What we see in the United States is a milder effort within the context of democracy to try to maintain aspects of this morality of higher purposes. And you can see each time it loses ground, there's an effort to sort of rally around what's left. So no one is going to say that women shouldn't have careers anymore. That's just off the table. And no one is going to say that minorities should know their place as subordinate members of society. So now it focuses around homosexuals, who are still an acceptable group to claim to oppose. Homosexuality has a particular sort of moral contour in this context, because, of course, homosexuality is sex for self-fulfillment. It doesn't serve a higher purpose, A, because it's not procreative, and B, because it's not the traditional family that contributes to social stability. And of course, what offends conservatives so much is the effort by gay people to claim marriage as a right for themselves, which essentially invades the territory that the people still committed to the old morality are trying to defend. From the perspective of someone who's still committed to a morality of higher purposes, this looks immoral because it's different morality. One morality always looks immoral to a different morality because they have different rules. And what we're now undergoing is another transition in the meaning of marriage, from the notion that marriage is a way of sanctifying a relationship and directing it towards salvation, to a means that it's simply a matter of self-fulfillment. You choose whether or not to get married. It's of no independent significance. The question is, will you be fulfilled in your sexual life? Will you be fulfilled in your ability to have children, which you can do as an unmarried individual, if that's fulfilling to you? You can get divorced because if your marriage isn't a fulfilling one, then what you want to do is look for a different partner that breaches this notion that marriage is sanctified by God, and it also breaches the notion that marriage is a way of ensuring social stability and thus serves the higher purposes of the state. So it's a major transformation. In the book, at least, I try not to identify a right or wrong. I just try to describe what I perceive as a social process. I would guess that we've only got a century to go. I don't think that any of these views that are now being clung to and are generating all this emotional heat are going to be around 100 years from now. What may happen at that point is maybe there'll be a new morality on the horizon that will begin to displace the morality of self-fulfillment, and that people who are committed to what is now the modern advancing morality will be clinging to that in the face of something that I can't quite imagine right now.